Have you guys seen my bedazzled helmet and jacket anywhere? Wait a minute, who's that? Woohoo! He's got my bedazzled helmet and jacket.
That's the lava monster!
Lava monster? Oh no!
In 2018, a 7-year-old outearned every single person on YouTube. Not just every kid channel, every adult one too. Ryan Kaji pulled in $26 million that year, more than any other creator on the entire platform, and he did it 3 years running. That's the part of this story everyone already knows. Here's the part most people don't. That same empire is falling apart right now, and it's falling apart badly. There's a movie that lost almost $10 million. There are federal regulators who've spent years building a case around exactly how this business operates, and there's Ryan himself, who's now 14, all but telling the world on camera that he's done. So once you actually look at how his parents built this thing, the collapse doesn't feel like bad luck. It feels earned. Let's get into how Ryan and Ryan Kaji turned their toddler into a billion-dollar YouTube empire, and how the exact same instincts that built it are the ones tearing it apart now. But to get why that collapse feels so earned, you have to go back to where this actually started. And it didn't start with greed, at least not at first. Back in 2015, Ryan is 3 years old and completely obsessed with watching other kids unbox toys and play games on YouTube, channels like EvanTube HD. He tells his mom he wants to do the exact same thing, and instead of brushing it off, she takes him along to a toy store, hands him a Lego train set, and films the whole trip. For a while, that's genuinely all this is. A normal family messing around with a camera, growing slowly, nothing that looks remotely like a business. And then one video changes everything. A giant surprise egg stuffed with more than 100 Disney car toys. Ryan's reaction to it is pure, unfiltered 3-year-old joy, the kind you cannot fake no matter how good an actor you are. That single video pulls in over 1.2 billion views, and I'm going to say that number again because it barely feels real. 1.2 billion. Within about a year of that video blowing up, this family had made more than $34 million. At 4 years old, Ryan was already sitting on that kind of money, at least on paper, and a regular household in Texas had suddenly become one of the biggest kids' channels on the entire platform. And that's the moment that actually matters here, more than any dollar figure that comes later, because right there, Ryan and Ryan are handed a choice most parents never have to make. Do you treat this as a fun, lucky moment your kid gets to enjoy, and let it fade the way most viral moments do? Or do you look at the numbers, run the math, and start planning what comes next? They picked immediately, and they picked it fast. Within months, brand deals and sponsorship offers were pouring in, and Ryan, a structural engineer, and Ryan, a high school chemistry teacher, quit their actual careers to go all in on their son. On paper, that sounds like nothing more than supportive parents backing their kid. But look at what they actually built next, and that framing starts falling apart fast. They didn't just support him, they built an entire production company around him, called Sunlight Entertainment, and at its peak it employed more than 30 people. That's 30 salaries, benefits, equipment, and production costs, all running on a business that had exactly one name attached to it: a literal child. At their busiest, the Kajis operated more than 10 channels at once, pumping out up to 25 videos every single week. A machine that size doesn't run on a kid's enthusiasm. It runs on a schedule, whether that kid feels like performing or not. And that schedule swallowed Ryan's entire life. His house got gutted and turned into a full production set. Lighting rigs, cameras, and props in nearly every room. Breakfast became content. Playtime became content. Even a random trip to the store became content. His home stopped being a home and turned into a workplace instead. By 2018, at just 7 years old, Ryan hits the number I opened with, and it's worth being precise about it. He becomes the highest paid creator on all of YouTube. Not the highest paid kid, the highest paid person full stop, ahead of every single adult on the platform. And he doesn't do it once. He holds that title again in 2019 and again in 2020, 3 years straight at the top, built on a licensing empire that stretched way past YouTube ad money. Walmart toy lines, a Colgate collaboration, mobile games, even a balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. Here's where it actually gets uncomfortable. Every dollar of that money legally belonged to his parents, not some of it, all of it. Child actors in Hollywood have had their earnings legally protected since California passed the Coogan Law back in 1939, decades before any of this existed, but child influencers had nothing close to that protection. There was no trust fund set aside for him, and no legal guardian looking out for his financial interests. Nothing was in place at all. Ryan was the golden goose, and there wasn't a single law standing between him and the people running the show. And as the operation scaled up, the content itself started to shift. What began as a kid genuinely playing with toys he loved slowly turned into something else. Sponsored segments folded directly into the play, with no clear line between Ryan actually enjoying a toy and Ryan being paid to hold it up on camera. And remember who's actually watching these videos. This is an audience of toddlers and preschoolers, mostly between 2 and 6 years old. Kids who still believe in the tooth fairy. Kids who can't read yet. Kids who look at Ryan and see someone just like them. When Ryan says he loves a toy, they believe him completely. And then they go ask their own parents for that exact toy. None of those ads were disclosed. There was no label, no separation, nothing telling a 4-year-old that what they were watching was actually an advertisement. And eventually, parents, consumer advocates, and child psychologists all started raising the alarm that this wasn't just ethically shaky, it might genuinely be illegal. And in 2019, it stopped being just an online debate. The Federal Trade Commission and the New York Attorney General launched one of the largest digital enforcement actions in American history, and they went straight after Google and YouTube for violating COPPA, the law that protects children's data online. YouTube had spent years serving targeted ads to an audience it knew, without question, was full of small children, harvesting data through web cookies that followed kids across the internet who were barely old enough to hold a tablet. The fine came out to $170 million, split between the FTC and the New York Attorney General, and it remains the largest COPPA settlement ever recorded. YouTube had to disable comments across kids' content, restrict targeted advertising, and recalibrate the entire algorithm so it stopped pushing kids' channels the way it used to. For most families, that would have been a headline they read about and moved on from. For the Kajis, it gutted the business overnight, and Shayon said so himself.
So after the target ad was removed, our revenue went down by 70%. After just that day. So
what was this day for people who don't have context?
Okay, so the FTC, I guess, prohibited the target ads for the made for kids content from YouTube after a certain point, and that the target ad it takes the big role on the YouTube, and after that point, that's the majority of the revenue, the ad revenue. So after that was taken out from the kids content, we lost revenue of 70%.
They lost 70% of their revenue almost overnight, and that number came straight from the person who watched it happen. Think about what that means for an operation the size of theirs. 30 salaries, multiple channels, constant production costs, and 2/3 of the money paying for all of it just disappears in a single stretch. The financial pressure on this family didn't ease up after that. It exploded. And the response to that kind of pressure wasn't to slow down and rethink anything. It was to produce even more. Around this same time, with revenue cratering and the pressure mounting, the Kajis needed a way to change the story people were telling about this channel. So they didn't just push out more content. They changed its name entirely, taking Ryan Toys Review and turning it into Ryan's World, and they let Ryan be the one to announce it.
So the bad news is there will be no more Ryan's Toys Review. But the good news is that we're still gonna make videos. Yay! We're just gonna change the channel name, and now it's gonna be called Ryan's World. We're changing the channel name because we don't just do toy videos, we do science experiments, and we do challenges like the floor is lava.
On its own, that clip plays like a fun update, a kid excited that the channel is just growing into something bigger. But look at the timing. This rebrand landed right in the middle of a federal case about how this exact channel had been running ads aimed at children. This wasn't really about creative growth, it was about putting distance between the brand and a scandal, wrapped in a kid's voice so it would look like his idea instead of a legal strategy. A rebrand can paper over a PR problem. It can't solve the problem that came next, because there was no strategy on earth that was going to stop Ryan from actually growing up. The kids who discovered him at 4 and 5 were now pre-teens themselves, and they'd moved on to gaming channels and social media, the stuff that actually reflected who they were now. Kids his own age had zero interest in watching a 12-year-old perform excitement over toys built for 5-year-olds. And this wasn't some quiet internal problem the family could manage behind closed doors. It went public, and loudly.
One of y'all please tell me why in the freak is Ryan World still making video? If y'all don't recognize who this dude is right here, and yes, I'm saying dude, he's a grown man, I'm gonna show you something real quick. This is him back in 2018. I remember as a kid, I used to see his videos all over the place. I'm like, yo, this little kid's making a lot of money. Bro, he has 39 million subs. And back in the day, he was pulling 2 billion, 1.2 billion, 400 million, 461 million. He was Mr. Beast before Mr. Beast. I recently saw this video on my timeline, and in 2025, he is still making videos. So I went on a search to figure out why. He does not want to make videos, at least from what I've heard. Apparently, bro, his parents is forcing him to make videos, and you're asking why? I'm gonna show you. Lil bro has an estimated net worth of $100 million, and this is probably not even all his money, because you know the net worth doesn't get all your money.
He's sitting on $100 million in estimated net worth, and the internet's reaction boils down to one very simple question. Why is this still happening? Former fans started leaving comments saying they used to envy his life, and now they were just relieved to be normal kids instead. And here's the actual problem underneath all of it. The entire brand, the merchandise, the partnerships, the whole identity of the channel was built around one specific image, a cheerful, excitable, very young Ryan. Once he outgrew that image, his parents had two options. They could update the brand to match who he'd actually become, or they could force him to keep performing a version of himself that no longer existed. They picked the second option, and it showed. They pushed harder instead of adapting, reposting old videos, running live streams on repeat, trying gaming content and educational challenges to chase back an older audience. None of it worked. Viewers openly called the new stuff forced and cringe, and by 2023, Ryan had fallen from first place to 17th on YouTube's highest earning list, the exact same list he'd topped for 3 years running. And if you want to see exactly what all of that actually cost him, there's one moment that shows it better than any stat ever could. It's a podcast appearance, and on paper, it should be simple. Ryan is the guest, brought on to talk about his life, his channel, and everything he's built. But watch the actual dynamic in the room, because it turns deeply uncomfortable within about 30 seconds.
Like, Ryan, are you going to keep making YouTube videos, given your interest to be an animator and maybe go behind the camera, like as you get older?
I think I will keep going for a while, yeah.
That's the whole dynamic, playing out in real time. His parents do almost all of the talking, and when Ryan actually gets a moment to speak, he looks at them first, like he's checking whether he's allowed to say what he's about to say. Once you actually sit with what he does manage to get out, the message underneath it is pretty clear. The part of his life he genuinely enjoyed is over, and what he wants now is just an ordinary teenage life. Sports, video games, hanging out with friends, going to the movies. But publicly, he can't say that outright, so he gives the careful, safe answer instead, the one that keeps the cameras rolling and keeps his parents happy. They heard all of that too, and their response to hearing their own son admit he was done wasn't to scale anything back. It was to greenlight something even bigger. That something bigger was a movie, Ryan's World, Titan Universe Adventure, a $10 million production sold to the public as proof the brand could finally compete outside of YouTube. It did not go that way, not even close. The film made $600,000 at the box office against that $10 million budget, which means it lost more than $9 million in a single swing. And the reason becomes pretty obvious the second you actually see it.
You got us out of Dark Titan's lair! You need us! She has a point.
How's this for a point? I'm the big brother, I know best, and I'm in charge.
That clip alone tells you everything about the actual quality on display here. Theatre staff in multiple countries reported screenings with 0 people in the seats. Not a handful, not a couple dozen, 0. By the third weekend, films with no marketing budget at all were outperforming it at the box office. It landed an IMDb score of 1.8 out of 10, one of the worst ratings of any film that year in any genre, and viewers online described it as a cash grab that couldn't even succeed as a cash grab. This wasn't just money burned, it was public, undeniable proof that the audience was completely gone, and that Ryan's parents were still spending money they didn't have chasing an image of their son that no longer existed. So with Ryan pulling back and clearly exhausted, the cameras didn't stop rolling. They just found a new subject. His 2 younger sisters, Emma and Kate, 7 years old, started getting pushed to the front, first alongside Ryan and then increasingly without him. They got their own animated series, their own dedicated content, their own toy lines, and the moment people online saw what was happening, the reaction was furious because everyone recognized the pattern instantly. Ryan made this family millions of dollars, and the second he stopped being useful, his parents didn't stop the machine. They just pointed it at different kids. It's the same house, the same playbook, the same production company, just 2 new faces standing where his used to be. But something did actually start to shift, and it didn't come from the family. It came from lawmakers. Illinois passed a kid influencer protection law in 2023, one of the first of its kind, requiring parents who profit off their children's content to set aside a real percentage of those earnings into a trust the child can access at 18. California passed its own version shortly after. Washington State followed. Ryan's name will never actually appear in any of that legislation, but the exact gap those laws were built to close is the same gap his family spent a decade operating inside of. And honestly, none of this is even a new story. It's just an old one wearing a new platform. Macaulay Culkin made his parents millions from Home Alone and then spent years fighting in court just to get control of his own money. The Olsen twins built their own billion-dollar empire as literal toddlers, and the second they had legal control over their own careers, they walked away from acting almost entirely. It's always the same shape: a talented kid, parents who spot the opportunity, protections that don't exist yet, and years later, an adult who has to reckon with what their childhood actually was. So where is he now? The family relocated from Texas to Hawaii back in 2021, and Ryan now attends a private school there instead of spending every waking hour on set. From what shows up on social media, his day-to-day looks a lot more like a normal teenager's. Tennis, skateboarding, swimming, and when he talks about what he actually wants to do next, one answer keeps coming up again and again.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
When I grow up, I want to be like an animator. I think it's really fun to do because like the drawing, and then like at the end you get to see the whole thing and see what you've like worked on the whole time. And like sometimes I can see like the drafts first, and then after I can see like the full thing. And it's really cool to see how it changes over time.
Yeah, you were in the front.
And that's the one part of this entire story that feels completely uncomplicated. He wants to build something himself, from the ground up, instead of just starring in something someone else built around him. He's still officially listed as a creative director at Sunlight Entertainment, which in practice mostly means occasional voiceover work and brief appearances whenever the brand needs his face. But given that he spent his entire life being directed, managed, and packaged by other people, wanting to make something of his own makes complete sense. He's 14 years old, and he still doesn't have the freedom to fully act on that yet. But for the first time in this whole story, it actually sounds like he knows exactly what he wants. So here's the real question this whole story leaves you with. If this had only ever happened to Ryan, you could almost make the case that his parents got in over their heads with a situation nobody could have prepared for. But it didn't stop with Ryan. The moment he started pulling back, that same machine turned on to two 7-year-olds who can't consent to any of this either. So which is it? Is this simply what happens to a normal family when their kid accidentally becomes a business, or does doing it again to Emma? And Kate proved that it was never really about Ryan at all, and it was always about the money? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, smack the like and subscribe buttons, and I'll see you in the next one.